Welcome to Cast Iron Conversations, the only podcast on the market that talks about cooking, culinary, and all things in between. Now, before we get started with today's special guest, I just wanted to go over some house rules first. Now, this platform was created for those of you who enjoy talking about food and cooking, and we can only grow with your support. So if you don't mind, and why would you? Because you love me and I love y'all, please go ahead and subscribe to this podcast. We've got 2 seasons worth of episodes available now on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and wherever podcasts are broadcast. Now, we'll be wrapping up season 2 shortly, taking a much needed mental health break for the spring, and we're coming back with season 3 in late April. Don't miss out and make sure that you're locked in. And with that being said, let's get into today's episode. Now, my guest is the creator of one of the most unique and engaging culinary experiences that I've ever taken part of. And yes, I say experiences because I had the pleasure of attending one of her events. We're going to talk about that plus some other topics as well. But for now, let's go ahead and give the spectacular chef her flowers. She's the creator of Sound Bites, and that's Bites spelled Bites. She's a former contestant on Food Network's Out Chef. Check out season 3 for her episode. And she's taken over the Philly food scene by storm. Y'all already know what to do. Cast Iron family, get out of your virtual seats, stand on your feet, and give a much needed round of applause to my good friend, Chef Bria George. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. And thank you for that amazing intro.
Pleasure's all mine. How have you been?
I've been great. I've been good. I've been cooking all the things, doing all the things, trying to get all the things together. You know, it's when you're like a creator in that space of cooking, it's just a constant of like, what can you bring to the table? What can you make? What can you do? But like also balanced by like, I don't know, more foods to make. So what do I do? But it's been all good. How about you? How you doing?
I'm doing great. And I wanted to talk about that real quick before we go into the episode.
Mm-hmm.
It is such a struggle sometimes as a chef to figure out what to make. I tell my wife this all the time, and I hope nobody takes offense to us, but we need a new type of meat. Like, I'm personally sick of chicken, beef, and you have lamb, you have veal. You can think of different things, but then it's like, can I get something else? You know,
right?
It's hard to cook sometimes.
Joking with my cousin, and I was like, "Is all these fish in the sea?" And you telling me I can't deep fry none of them? Like, none of them are safe for us to like a little butter and oil on the side. But I think it's like I think the most difficult thing is also balancing like your creativity and as you grow, and especially like for myself, I started as like a home chef, and that was, my platform. I wanted to be accessible, relatable, and create things and teach folks how to make things right in the comfort of their own home. At the exact same time, what I personally feel like I'm challenged by is just like this economic battle of being a chef as well. So it's like you're telling folks to, cook certain things, and it's like, I don't know if people got the budget to even really do that. I mean, eggs is a kidney and a liver. So like just to make an omelet, it's like $40.
You got to put a down payment on eggs nowadays, man.
Exactly. Like I saw somebody come home and she came home with 3 cartons of eggs. I said, "Oh, you're rich. Like you hit the lick, you hit a lottery." So I think it's like, it's constantly trying to figure out ways to reinvent things. Also feeling like you're not recreating things that other people have, which is nothing wrong with that. But for me, at least, I try to make things that I haven't seen. Not that just because you ain't seeing doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's not true. But, just trying to bring new things to the table.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely talk a little bit more about that in the episode. But let's get everybody acquainted with you and get to know a little bit more about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and a little bit about your journey on becoming a chef.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from Philadelphia, born and raised. If you don't know a Philly girl, you are missing out in your life. I'm telling you right now, if you don't got a friend, a homie, your bestie, if she's not from Philly, it's not it. So I'm just saying that. I rep that loud and proud.
I got a friend here who's from Philly, Chef Bria, and I got a wife from Philly, so I can attest to that.
So you're double down. You know what I mean? You got the balance. You got the wife. It's all good. So I started cooking. I guess my first iterations of cooking was with my grandmother. She's from the South. And grandmothers from the South are specific because number one, you learn how to cook differently because my grandmother cooked everything from scratch. And so I remember her like taking me to the meat markets when I was a kid and like getting chicken, but the whole chicken, and they would pluck the feathers and do all the things. Like it was right then and there. And then one of the things I always talk about from learning from my grandmother cooking from scratch, especially when you're eating like traditional Southern Black food, there's no way to cut corners. And when you think about like the history of, soul food, really, like when I get it. Anybody can do anything in a quick moment. I'm also not a chef to tell people you can't. I don't really use that word. For me, there's no right or wrong. I think there's a outcome for doing something. So if you make collard greens in 45 minutes, you're going to taste collard greens that are 45-minute collard greens. Is that my preference? Not necessarily. Can it be done? Absolutely. If you only got 45. But how I learned is that all of those foods, they take time. And they're like, in truth, there's no way to cut corners. So when you're learning how to cook, to me, it was the best foundation for me to learn how to cook before I started branching off into other things, because I had to nurture it. Like, to make mac and cheese the correct way, as my grandmother says, we ain't buying cheese out the bag. You got to get it off the block, and you have to grate it by hand, not the machine. Like, there's literally just that minor difference, not the machine, like literally by hand. I had to grate it and layer it. That's a 3-hour process just for mac and cheese. Collard greens take 2.5 hours, 3 hours, really. Like, it just depends. So those are my first iterations of cooking. But also my dad is from Barbados, and he is an executive chef. He's been a chef for my whole life, so 30 plus years. And I grew up watching him in the kitchen. So I danced my whole life. I've done ballet. And my dad worked at a restaurant that was very close to my dance school. And I was always in the kitchen with him, in between classes or something like that, or if he picked me up, whatever. Now, in my household, I will say, when you have a parent that is a chef, there's a misconception that, you eat all the good food. And wrong answer. Like, I was a pro cereal maker. Like, because living as a chef, you work 17 hours days. I danced like I was Misty Copeland. So after school, I was in dance till 10 o'clock. Ain't nobody worried about food. It's not a big thing. So my larger meals, or like those things where I remember my memories of food, were family gatherings. It was, auntie came over, uncles came over, Thanksgiving, yada, 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 whatever. So in truth and honesty, which I think, is my own truth, I didn't really grow up cooking per se. I watched it. I spent time in the kitchen with both of them, and I was observant in that way. But I have no interest in food. I had the appetite of a squirrel. I ate 2 cheese curls and a Cheez-It, and I was okie dokie. Like, that was fine. Not until I got into college is when I had to learn how to cook. Because I'm like, first of all, I'm not walking to the dining hall because it's blocks away. Number 2, like, it's giving me the runs, so not trying to. And then 3, like, you're a broke college student, so either you keep eating out or you figure out how to make something work. And that's when I started cooking a little bit more. And it just became something I had to do. I had to feed myself, so I had to cook. I think the love for it came somewhere in between that, in honesty. It wasn't something where I started and I was like, this is amazing. I think I just kept going, and I'm the type of person that the more I get better at something, the more I enjoy it. And I realized I was getting better at it. When I think it was like right during COVID, it happened. And I actually had attended an event that a friend was having, and she made some food or whatever. And my husband looked at me and said, "You can make better food than this." And I was like, "Really?" And I was like, "I don't think so." Because I was like, it was very, very good. And he was like, "You cook all the time. Like, you should start an Instagram page." And at the time, I was like, don't nobody need another food page. Like, nobody wants this. Like, I don't, it was the cooking by this and treats by this and lashes by bloop bloop sort of era. And I was like, I don't need to do, you know what I mean? I don't need another page. And he was like, just do it. And I did it. But at the time, and I think still literally to this point, to this second, I did it for myself. I did not care who saw it. There was no cadence. There was no thought behind it. There was no, let me use the if I made it, it got posted. I'm like a natural like music lover, just like dancing growing up and things like that. So I learned how to sort of integrate music and everything like that. And it just came with time. It was something that was just like humming in the background. I didn't set out to be like, I'm going to be a creator and I'm going to take this. It just was something I was doing for fun. Over the past couple years, though, it had sort of grown. I started doing smaller catering orders for family and friends. But I found myself, which I love my peoples, you know me, and I love our folks. And I really had to escape the collard green circuit. I had to get out of it. And I needed a way to sort of communicate to folks that food is not the background. It can be the forefront, and it should be a part of everything. So as an example, I had someone reach out to me a few years ago, and I'm having a Paris themed birthday, and she had the dress, the whole nines, the decor hanging from the ceilings. It was Paris in springtime in that piece. Okay. And I'm like, what do you want to eat? And she's like, I want chicken and mac and cheese and collard greens and yams. Now, again,
What do they do with Paris?
what does that have to do with the Parisian theme, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. But I sort of begged her to sort of look at it full scope. And for me, I was like, that's how I wanted to orchestrate myself as a chef. I wanted to be someone that gave someone a full-fledged experience.
Mm-hmm.
When I created Sound Bites, and Sound Bites is it's an experience, like you said. So it's a 6-course music and food experience, and I wanted something that felt like nothing I had ever felt. I really just enjoy like going out without the pressures of doing stuff. I feel like we live in a day and age, which I understand, and being in my 30s, that's just the pocket that I'm in, is everybody's networking. Everyone's getting to know somebody, getting to work with somebody, and you flying out business cards left and right. And that's all well and good. But I just wanted a place where the only thing I had to do was eat and chill. And I needed a way to sort of force people to do that without creating also, things that people had to wear. Like you have to wear this color, and you have to wear this, and you have to do this. And then you're inundated with like performances and speeches. And I think that those things have a place, and I'm glad that they exist. I know plenty of people and friends with folks that are the leaders in that space. And I think that is needed. I just mean also, I need a place where there's nothing to do. Like, what is the job? Nothing. Like, you can talk, don't talk. You can eat, don't eat, but there's nothing to do. And I really wanted to marry music and food together, because I don't think that it gets, to me, they're one and the same. And being married to somebody who's also a DJ, mm-hmm. I know the importance of music. I know the importance of food. And I wanted to really force them together. And so I created courses that are supported by music, so they don't really exist, one without the other. And then being able to have each course sort of orchestrated to its own music. And the spaces that I picked to have it, I intentionally picked because they don't have cell phone service. It's a complete cell phone suck. But it forces people to talk, and you're in a room with people because it's intimate, that you don't know. Probably you're mm-hmm. forced to sit with people you don't know, or by yourself or not, or whatever. But every person that comes leaves with a new friend. They leave with the experience. They leave with, I said it at the last Sound Bites, I want people to try something that they never have, and then try something that they haven't before. If they don't like something, that's a good thing. I want them to, figure those things out, but I want people to be immersed in sort of new things.
And let's talk about a couple of points from, first of all, thank you for sharing your background, sharing your insights on how Sound Bites, came to be. A couple of things that you said that really did stand out to me. And it was mentioned in the story about the friend that you had that wanted to book the Paris event, but they wanted chicken and mac and cheese. Uh-huh. Often from time to time, kind of, I guess, dance around the topic, because I don't want people to think that I'm coming to, against soul food or people who eat soul food. Mm-hmm. I often feel like as Black chefs, I think that we often get put in a box when it comes to that. Like for me personally, soul food is my culture. My family comes from North and South Carolina and parts of Louisiana. So soul food is the backbone of our culture. When I was younger, I was the kid who would help my grandmother clean the collard greens. I also cleaned the chicken too. Mm-hmm. I would watch her cook whole full meals every single day for the family, just big elaborate meals, cabbage, mac and cheese, chicken, the whole nine. Mm-hmm. But I also feel like it's because of the environments that a lot of us grew up in. Some of us may have grown up, poor. I know I didn't grow up with much, but I had my family. We're not really exposed to a lot of food. Mm-hmm. And so when you say like, oh, I want to do a French theme for my wedding, or I want to do a birthday party centered around Greece, and then they say, oh, chicken, mac and cheese. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the issue becomes we don't really know much. We're not given that exposure like some other cultures are to other ethnicities of food. So we're limited when it comes to that. So one of my challenges that I often give to people, especially on my platform, is that while it's definitely okay to, eat your chicken and mac and cheese, try to think of ways where you could either incorporate some of those elements into another ethnic dish, maybe like a fusion of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're not willing to, fuse the dishes, because, some dishes don't always go together and some dishes are overdone to death, egg rolls, but we're not going to talk about that. But, but point being,
upset. You're gonna make the egg roll warriors upset now.
Listen. I don't care if y'all can come at me. You can cancel me all you want. Not everything belongs in a damn egg roll. All right. I'm tired of the soul rolls. I'm tired of y'all just putting.
Now don't do that, because I do a soul roll with mine slapping. I promise.
You got to cancel me too, then.
I was. That's what I'm saying. Shoot.
No, but like, all seriousness though, I feel like one of the things that I like to do on my platform is to cook things that aren't the traditional soul food or traditional social media recipes. And while it may not get as much traction as someone who cooks something that's familiar, the point of my platform is to educate people on the different ethnicities of food, the different cultures that exist out there, to educate people. And so with that being said, my question to you would be, what are some ways that you think we as chefs could kind of educate our culture to the different types of food that's out there, while also trying to make it seem relatable and affordable? Because like you said earlier too, there are a lot of things that we're not exposed to cooking wise, but with this economy and the way things are priced, sometimes ingredients can be hard to find. And when they are available, they're rather expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Also, I'm the same way as you, where I try to cook, different things and sort of expose folks to different things. But I'm also a firm believer in sort of reinventing things. And I think that, to me, is my job as a chef or someone that comes to me and says, hey, Bria, can you help me create a menu, or can you help me create, or cater something for me? And it's my job to sort of take that and say, okay, well, what about this? So someone, again, wanted mac and cheese for me, and I switched that around, and I was like, well, what if we did like mac and cheese, like bites, and we fried them in balls instead of, we did something like a play on like a grilled cheese tomato soup type of a vibe. And, we did something sort of to dip it in. But I think, like, to your point, Pat, like, and I think about this a ton too, also being like a Black chef, is that I also feel like we're the only ones that get challenged by cooking our culture. Because like growing up and like from being on a cooking show as well, I felt that pressure, like literally in the moment, to be like, do I just cook because I got chicken as my ingredient? So I'm almost like, well, dang, I'm already here. Like I might as well. But what I did is I leaned into it, because I think when you watch folks from other cultures, if you watch an Asian chef, if you watch a, Japanese chef, if you, folks of other cultures is what I'm trying to say. No one is like, why is the Italian chef making the pasta dish? Nobody's like, why is the Korean chef making this? Like, and you see that a ton. They go through complete rounds, and everything they make is right from their culture, because it's what it's what you have grown up to. It's a difficult place as a Black chef, because it's also what we know. So part of it, I think, is like, why do people care so much what we make, and who cares if we be making mac and cheese and collard greens and mac, because that is our culture as well. I think also too, to your point about like exposure, from having a dad as a chef, I took it for granted. I think I didn't probably realize it at the time, but I was exposed to a lot of different foods very early. Like a girl, I was cracking mussels at 6, like, you know what I mean? But, and even now, these kids, these day and age, they like, Mom, can you give me crab legs? And you like crab legs. Like, what happened to a chicken nugget? No, they're like, I want a seafood, please. and a full back crab. Thank you very much. But I think, I think some of us are exposed to those different foods. I think what challenges us, to be honest, is when you're creating food that is trying to be palatable for other people, you're also trying to give something that's palatable to other people. So as an example, when I post stuff and I make a crab dip stuffed salmon with blah, 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 like, it gets a lot of traction because people like salmon. It's a very, like, there's layers of warriors, there's egg roll warriors, and there's salmon warriors, like, you know what I mean? And they go for it. But if I push the envelope a little bit differently, like when I posted stuff that I did from sound bites, which is a little more niche, traction's not exactly the same, because it's a bit too much. I'm saying things like choka spices and this spices or whatever. But I think the point is just to create for yourself. And I think what I also try to do when I share ingredients or share foods is like, everything doesn't need to be this. And might get hate for this as well. But I really, really dislike when folks that cook say like, this is the way you have to do something. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the way you have to do something. I made that crab diff salmon and I used imitation crab. Somebody could look at that, but that's not the way to do it. Okay, I don't got the budget for crab meat right now. What if you don't have the budget for crab meat? Does that mean you're limited out of it? No, you can create the same different things with different flavors. So I think it's about giving people options on what to create and how to create the same things in a different way. I just saw somebody yesterday. He's not a chef, but he is somebody who does content on being frugal and saving money.
Mm-hmm.
Made a lasagna. And now his point is that you can get the essence of something without having it. So he got his cheap noodles, but he did sausage that he cut up like breakfast sausage because he was trying to get that meat flavor. He used tomato sauce instead of a pasta sauce, and then he just used bagged mozzarella. Is that technically how somebody would make a lasagna? Probably not. Like, you don't have any ricotta, you don't have all those other things. Was it lasagna in his essence? Yeah, like he put noodles down, he put sauce down, and it's like and I was reading the comments, it was a very mixed, like, people were like, oh my God, like this is really bad and blah, blah, blah. And other people were like, great. So it's just all about like how you want to present, what you're trying to show, what you're trying, to educate. And like you said, a lot of times people just aren't thinking outside of the box because they are just experiencing what they see. That's what food is. It's experiencing, literally, when you think about it, what somebody else is putting out in the ether. Some folks are not curious when they come to food. They like what they like. They're picky. They like things that are familiar. So it's all about like someone's eating palate or whatever. As a chef or as a creator, you can't really worry about that too much. And that's why I always say you create for self.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. Let's shift the topic to a little bit about sound bites. Now,
Yes.
a couple things I wanted to ask about sound bites. First of all, the menu that you had last time was amazing. I'm still thinking about those grits, how you cooked it, just the way how the cheddar and all the spices just got to incorporate into that one little bite. Chef's kiss. You're welcome. You're welcome. When you come up with these menus for your events, is it something that you're just like, okay, well, I just thought about the menu item, I want to create it? Or do you have a process where you cook it a few times, you taste it, have a little trial and error, and then you decide, all right, this is how I want it to come out. This is what I'm going to make. Like, how is your process when you come up with these menus?
Yeah, it sounds bad. And I should say like, oh yeah, I make these things hundreds of times, and I test them. I don't, because the way that I've always cooked, I feel like there's probably some scientific term of what I'm talking about, but I can sort of understand how something is going to taste because a lot of the times I cook constantly. So my spice cabinet is like, overflowing. So my personal exposure to the things that I'm using, even if I haven't used them in that way, is familiar enough to understand if that works. And I think I picked up that like intuitive cooking and learning from my grandmother and my dad, because neither one of them measured. You just sort of, and you understand this too, as you cook, you just learn, you just understand. I don't know how to explain it. I can't explain it to anybody else. You taste something and you know that it's missing acidic. You know that it's missing this. So even when you're creating and thinking of flavors, you can say something and be like, I'm not sure if that's going to make sense because it's going to off balance this, etc. I'm a person that tries to marry things that are familiar with something that is unfamiliar. So I try to give it to you in something in a way that I think most people might have had. I don't know in particular. So as an example, for y'all listening, the menu item that Pat's talking about, I did a grits cake. So it was a Southern grits cake that I fried and seared. And I did a bacon jam that had some like really high like citrus and orange notes throughout it. Now, again, we're Southern, so grits, like being grits, like I could probably talk. Now, I don't know if the average person, like I have plenty of friends that have never eaten grits before and they're Black. And I just be like, what planet did you drop off from? But like, to each their own. I don't know, I ain't judging. But to me, it's something that's commonplace is what I'm saying. Like, you go to a diner, there's grits, it's on the menu, whether you get it or not, it's there. but I wanted to give it to folks in a way where it's like, okay, well, typically you just get grits like in a bowl or something like that. And so it's reinventing how something is presented, because it does give a different level of flavor. Because it's seared on each side, you sort of get this charredness from it. And then also showing the elevation of it. So quick grits are fine. I have them in my house. That is what I make Monday through Friday most times, because I'm not hovering over the stove for 45 minutes making grits on a Saturday morning, because I don't have time for that. But I did grow up having a grandmother that taught me how to cook, true grits, and real grits take time. They take like an hour and a half. And that depth of flavor is what I wanted to sort of bring to the table. For sound bites specifically, it's also music that I'm doing at the same time. So as I'm cooking the thing, I'm also thinking about what genre of pocket of music does this put me? What if I close my eyes and I was eating this thing? What do I want to hear? What do I want to feel like? What does the ambiance sort of remind me of? And it's also making sure that each menu item on that has a difference there. And so it's almost like creating a dance a little bit. It's, deciding which ingredients go together, what music it's going to be paired to, and does that sort of balance out, with the rest of it.
Now, does your husband help? Because, well, if those of you who don't know, her husband, Matt, is an amazing DJ. I actually got to meet him before I actually got to meet Bria, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I was at a Yelp event, and I'm listening to the music. I'm like, yo, the vibes are really good with this. And then that's when she messaged me like, hey, that's my husband there. And I'm like, he's really good with the curation of the music. And then when I got to experience sound bites, I'm like, okay, the music goes perfectly with pretty much everything that's on the menu. Like, you get a mix of, the upbeat, you get the chill vibe, but to her point, everything especially curated so you feel the ambiance and you get to feel the atmosphere, not just with the food, but with the music. Is that something that you both kind of collaborate with in terms of a playlist? Do you kind of say, hey, I want this type of mood with my food, come up with the song, or do you kind of like let him do it, or do you come up with it?
I completely give that full range to him. I've always been a person, like, even in life, when I hire folks, I work with people in the way that, like, if I trust you fully to do something and I believe that you can do something, it's because I think you can do it. You don't really need my input. Like, if you need feedback from me to help you get to where you are, but it's like, he is an incredible DJ, and I tell him that all the time. Like, when I'm out and I'm at his gigs and everything, I'm like, if you weren't my husband, I'd be jamming in here. Like, it's not because of that. And I'm also not a person to lie to people. Like, if he sucked, I would tell him. I'd be like, that's cute how you be doing that little, yeah, but like, it's not eating right now. So, and he knows this because I've said it with other things in our life where I'm like, that's not it. But
that's such a Black thing to say. That's cute, and just instead of just saying it sucks, he's like, "Oh, that's cute."
It is because I'm not gonna break your ego, but you get what I'm saying. It's cute.
Yeah,
it's real cute. But yeah, no, I allow him to make that. I come up with the menu. I tell him what the notes are even before the food is in front of him, and I will sort of explain. That's it. A bit of our process too, though, because I am a dancer. It will be him just sort of playing music out loud. And as I'm moving to something and I'm dancing, I'm like, oh, yes, this feels in my body correct. Because also sound bites, at our first one, folks are moving a bit more. But it's also a place where you can like get up and dance and catch a jig. Like, it's not necessarily sedentary. It's sort of a space to be whatever you want it to be. If you want it to be a date night, with your whomever, and you just chilling and you just talking, it's that too. If you want it to be a girls' night, I had people come there solo by themselves and sit with people they didn't know. It's all about that. But yeah, I completely leave that up to Matt. It's up to him to, decide. And it pushes him, as a DJ, and also to, in another way, what we talked about giving folks things that they haven't experienced, giving them music that you don't hear, because please don't get me wrong. Again, don't have the music warriors come for me. But I love me a little Glow. I love me a little Sex Red and whomever and whatever. But at the same time, like, I went to private school my whole life. Okay. Like, I get down to a Vanessa Carlton. Like, I get busy over there. I like jazz. I like rock. I like that. And there aren't places necessarily where you can hear that out loud because it's catered to a mainstream. If you go to a restaurant, it can be whatever's in the background, or it's probably mainstream. You go to the club, it's mainstream. I get it. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's also like, maybe in this specific, because it's coursed out and it's not for the whole time, just for 30 minutes, you might hear some jazz for a moment. And then you switch to hear something that's a little more, you know what I'm saying, boop, 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 boop. And then you bringing it back down and you're like, oh, I'm in the 2000s and I'm listening to, you know, whatever emo rock band I used to listen to when I was 12. Like, and you give people not only that genre of food, but you give them a genre of different types of music. And it's just like, it's a nice balance and experience. So whatever he got going on, I'm like, that's you, boo boo. Like, because he's a DJ, he knows his music more in depth. I trust him. I listen to him play in the house, and it could be just be like, oh, like I heard you play that. I like that. Make sure you add that. Sometimes we will be intentional about the specific songs we use to transition, just to make sure that that's clean and something might have in mind, or we might have heard a song and we're like, oh, this really embodies this menu, so let's make sure that's the song. But other than that, it's all him.
One thing I noticed about your events, which was very unique and stood out to me, was right before the transition to the next song or the next meal, you kind of explain a narrative of what food means to you, and just, you know, the experiences that you have with food and the menus and how you create your creations. Is that something that you feel you created? Let me try to word it again. Is that something that you feel that you created because it was necessary to the story, or was it just a way that you felt could have helped you stand out a little bit more with your events?
I think it was to bring it to the forefront. I think as somebody who has been like extremely creative from a very young age, that you realize that when you are around folks that are like you, they get it, right? If you are a painter and you put your tapestry up, I might look at that and be like, that's beautiful. That is very nice. And I might be like, I want that in my kitchen. And that might be as far as my brain allows me to go, because I'm not an artist in that way. And then you can have somebody who is in your like space that goes, oh, I really understand like the stroke and they use this paint. I ain't noticing all that. Same thing with you. Like when we talked about my food, you were able to give me feedback from a chef's point of view because you understand notes and tones and things, even this strategy behind a plate that somebody chooses, all those things you notice because that's what you do. Now the average person is be like, this is good or not. Like that's it, because they're experiencing that in a way and not in the same way. So I've learned as a creator that sometimes you have to draw it out for folks. And for me, it was playing on what sound bites are. It was my sound bite of what this plate is. And I like things that are immersive. I like when folks tell me and teach me and show me and kind of explain sort of a nuance of it. And so I added that as an element because it's something I feel that I'm great at, is being a storyteller, is about narrating, you know, what something means or how I feel or why I pick something. And I think all of that together, I think made just for a different experience for folks to really understand like why something's in front of them, and sort of have that support throughout.
How do you see sound bites evolving from what it is now to, let's say, 5 years from now? Where do you see sound bites going? Do you see it being a bigger immersive experience? Do you have any ideas on how you can elevate the experience from, you know, just a mental, physical, spiritual event? Without having to give away too much, because I know, you know, you don't want to whatever you have, but like, what are some ways that you think you're going to see your brand kind of expand in the next few years?
Yeah, I would love to see sound bites in different cities, because I think it's a great way to activate certain spaces and activate certain folks. So at this last Sound Bites, I used a company called Frost 321. Shout out to Amy, because she is my girl. They were my wedding vendor, and what they do is a like immersive alcoholic ice cream or sort of water ice that they freeze at negative 321 degrees. They got the liquid nitrogen smoke going and everything like that. And that was a cool way to activate her sort of in that space as well. I was able to connect with a company that, you know, I love dearly, which is Brundo Spices, and activate their spices throughout their menu. And during one of the during Sound Bites, in front of one of those courses, I was able to tell their story about being a women-owned, you know, brand, and they own their company all the way throughout, all the way sourced straight from Ethiopia, where their spices come from. So when I look at, you know, opportunities like that, I'm like, imagine Sound Bites being in DC at a restaurant that maybe isn't getting a ton of traction per se, because that's also like, it's like a fault of the pandemic is what I've seen, is that restaurants weren't able to fully recoup in the same way. Like, and it's so strange to think that the pandemic was like 5 years ago. And I mean, it's still technically ongoing, but we can dive down that another time.
Yes.
But, you know, restaurants used to be open all the time. And now it's like every restaurant is closed Monday through Tuesday or something like that. And also you're starting to see restaurants activate, you know, outside chefs to activate their spaces. So I would love to see it in different cities and, you know, activating maybe different florists or different whatever. I think one of the things, it sounds bad, but I know what sound bites can be. I also know what I don't want it to be. I don't necessarily want it to turn into something where it feels like an open mic, because I really want to stray away from having people feeling inundated with stuff. I think our entire life, our entire world is consumed, whether we want it to be or not, inundated with stuff. You turn on your phone and it's because it's like, if you don't pay attention to it, you're missing it. If you do, then you're overwhelmed by it. You do it at work, you do it, blah, blah, blah. We have a literal walking Cheeto dictator as a president. And so every day you're just like, oh, great, the world crumbles. But at least it's humorous to some degree, but not. You know, you do it when you're just trying to be a person. If you're a parent, it's just, this is like overconsumption of stuff. And I really just want it to be a space where you're just having fun. There's no rules. There's no rhyme. One of the biggest things I actually focused on was like dress code. And I got that question a ton. That was like outside of like, is there dairy XYZ on the menu? Because the menus are also a surprise, by the way, for y'all that don't know. You don't know what the menu is going to be. So you're just showing up blindly and just being like hoping for the best. But people were asking me what to wear. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, what do I wear? I'm like, whatever you want. And they're like, is it dressy? If you want it to be, put on your Sunday best or roll out in your sweatpants. I don't care, because I want people to just literally come as they are. There are not a ton of places where you can do that. Even if you think you can, you still feel like you can't, because you're like, ooh, I don't want to be too underdressed. I don't want to be too overdressed, and I don't want to be whatever. And it's like, nope, come exactly how you are. So I would love to see sound bites, like I said, in other cities. I would love to partner with like music brands or different things like that. I feel like it has the ability to have so many different legs, because again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm just because I don't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But from where I sit and what I've researched and learned, I haven't seen anything like this. And I think it's an opportunity to really just bring something sort of different into the ether. So, you know, keep your eyes peeled, because you could have a sound bites in DC, you know, in the next couple, wink, wink. You could have one in Maryland. You could have one in New York, maybe, you know. You can go West Coast side, a little Cali.
Let's speak it to an existence. It's going to happen. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about was your experience on Out Chef. For those of you who don't know, she was actually on Out Chef season 3, so make sure you check out that episode when you can. Mm-hmm. Just tell us a little bit more about that experience. Was it a surprise to you that you were even on the show, and just how did you feel, you know, competing?
I mean this with every fiber of my being. I had no idea. And for those of people who look like me, my Black women that might be listening, this is how deep I had no idea. It was a surprise. I had box braids in my head for 2 months, 2.5 months, actually. So you just picture that. Okay. And I thought I was going to an audition. And I was going to lead the box braid. It's how much I didn't know what was going on. And my brain said, you know what? I need to, you know, I might be on camera. Let me figure something out. So I took them out in one night and, you know, got there. My experience, as much as I can say and talk about it, was incredible, but it was completely a surprise. I think overall, like, less of sort of what happened and how it happened about the experience. I think it was just the experience of being there. I grew up watching the Food Network with my father. Plenty of times that was our show. Like, you know, we would watch, you know, I can't even think of all the dang shows, but all of them, all the Beat Bobby Plays, all the like you name it, we watched them all the time. And so for me, that experience was even grander because I got to be there with my father. He got to watch me cook on sort of this stage, something that for my whole life I always wanted to see him do it because I'm like, you would kill it. I'm like, you Beijing, you got that nice smooth skin face. They're gonna love you. Like, we gonna eat. I'm like, you gonna get us. You gonna get it. You gonna make it, Dad. But my dad has an opposite personality of mine, and he's very shy and very reserved. I have my mother's personality, so that wouldn't work well. Like, he was like freezing up in front of the cameras.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible. If anything, it was validating. I think, which I don't want to spoil it for folks who didn't see it, my outcome wasn't maybe necessarily how I saw it going. And to be honest, that outcome is what fueled sound bites. Right after it occurred, I fell into a deep depression, to be very honest. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to stand. I didn't know where to go, because right when I announced that I was going to be on it, the support came out the woodwork. I mean, it was overwhelming, and then right when it occurred, it stopped. No one said anything. And it's like, when you are a creator and your whole being is built off of analytics, not the whole being, but that's how you know what's going on. When the analytics is ticking correctly, you're like, I have something there. But when it stops, you're like, I don't know what to do. And I also was at a point where I didn't know what to say. I didn't know. I was like, do I share the recipe that I cooked on the show? Do I not? Do I make some grandiose statement about it? Do I not? Do I just go back to regular cooking? Do I not? I didn't know what to do, so much so that I froze and I did nothing. And I started sort of looking into myself, because also, as home chefs like we are, and like non-trained chef, you feel that all the time. Like, am I a real chef? And the real chefs will remind you in more ways than none that you not, or they'll try to make you feel like you're not, when you're like, no, there's just different types of learning how to cook. And I learned that from cooking with my dad, as someone who did go to culinary school and has worked in a restaurant his whole life and is trained in that capacity, that I push him in certain ways, because he is a little, which he's told me, a little jaded, because you've been doing something in a certain way. And I think as a home chef, because we don't have any quote rules around what we do or how we learn, I think it allows us to be and just don't get mad at me, but I think it allows us to be a little more creative sometimes, because you're not following certain things and you're sort of learning as you go. But that experience in Out Chefed was incredible. And just looking back on it, just to be able to say that I was on the Food Network. It's not even something that I thought that I wanted. It wasn't even something, because like I said, when I started my blog, Bia's Bites, that wasn't the goal. Like, I wasn't trying to do anything. I really wasn't trying to do anything. Like, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So to know that from 4 years of just me sharing and posting or whatever, that I could be on the same stage and then cooking with an iron chef, like, come on, like, you can't write that. So I love the experience. It was exhilarating experience. It was absolutely surprised. There's no doubt about it. I had no clue. It was so calm leading up to it. Didn't know right until that moment when they're like, let, and the lights start going. I was like, oh God, this is happening.
I think those experiences are kind of necessary, honestly. Most people might not agree with it, but I feel like for people to kind of reach their potential and realize how great they are, you need something to happen to you that's either going to be, for lack of a better word, depressingly humbling,
yep,
or it needs to kind of like break you in a way. Mm-hmm. And I'll give an example. So for those of you who may not know, I actually auditioned for MasterChef season 13, was it 2-3 years ago? I actually got flown out to California. I got to audition. Of course, I can't talk about it too much because they make you sign an NDA, but to kind of just give an insight, it wasn't exactly what I thought it was. And it kind of broke me, because MasterChef was the one show that I always told my supporters and told my family I wanted to get on. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Gordon Ramsay. I've always looked up, I wouldn't say looked up to him, but I've always looked at him as the standard when it came to
it's like
chefs.
The pinnacle of cooking, yeah.
And then when I got on to do my audition and I realized what I realized, I got back home. I was definitely sad about it. I was upset, because this was my end goal at the time. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, well, where do I go from here? What do I do? And I needed that moment to make myself realize that, one, there's a lot more that I can do as a chef. There was the social media platform that I had that was growing. I was starting to, get more comfortable with sharing my recipes with people. And then now I have a website for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also gave me the courage to say, you know what? There's a lot of people like me who have these thoughts, that have this voice, but they're not being heard. And we need a platform. And that's when I created this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And, my goal, of course, is to hopefully one day, get a studio where I can actually interview people in person.
Speak on it.
We can cook together. We can have conversations and just, the same thing we're doing now, but a little bit more face to face.
Yep.
It's going to happen. But, the point is that stuff like this needs to happen to kind of break you and to kind of humble you, to make you realize that you're more than what you think you are, in order for you to take the next step. Because sometimes you get comfortable and think, okay, well, this is plan A. Yeah. And not to get, too religious, but like God will be like, that's not your plan. That's your plan, but that's not my plan. And then you'll think that, plan A is where you're supposed to go. But then there's a whole alphabet there of steps you have to take. And once you get to that point, it's like, okay, I wanted to go here, but I'm glad I didn't, because I would never have seen A, B, and C. And when I left the MasterChef auditions, I got to go to FoodieCon. I got to meet Don Carey in person. I got to network with social media chefs like Babish, Nick DiGiovanni, Golden Balance, the Pasta Queen. I got to meet and talk and engage and actually become mutuals with them on social media. I got to get one of my first brand deals out there because of having that experience. And I would have never had that had I been stuck in MasterChef.
Right.
Second thing I had wanted to talk about, and I think it's definitely something that's important, especially when it comes to content creation. Analytics are important, but at the end of the day, you making that content that's, who organic to natural to who you are is even more important, because your numbers are always going to go up, 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 and then they're going to go down.
Yeah.
Naturally, because there are, I don't want to say oversaturated, but there's a lot of people out there who are trying to become food content creators. Some of them are doing it because they're actually talented people who can cook. And some people see it as a, quick, 15 minutes. But the fortunate thing is, especially since I've been doing this for 5 years, is that the ones who actually grind and make it are the ones who are still here. Sure, you get the new people who come in and they'll be like, oh, well, let me go make this recipe. And this is why I say I'm sick of egg rolls, because one of the first things that people do when they try to go viral or get fame is they cook, the familiar recipes. They cook the egg rolls, they'll cook the chicken wings, they'll cook the salmon. And then once they realize it's more to it than just those recipes, and you have to have personality and depth to your platform, you burn out and phase out. Yep. And I said it to say, like, yeah, their numbers will go up because they're cooking the more popular things. But once they stop cooking, then there's nothing left there. Whereas you've been in the game for years, you may have, fluctuating numbers, but you still have that audience that supports you. You still have a platform of people who, while your numbers may not be high or viral, they'll eventually go up, but your community will support you through everything that you do. Yep. So I said it to any new creator who's out there, just focus on that. Your numbers are important, but focus more so on putting out good quality content, focus on being yourself, focus on being organic, and everything will come into fruition.
And to that point, I think doing it also in a way that feels normal to you. Like sometimes I feel like, as someone who does, create, and I, to be honest, I stray away from calling myself a creator, because it's more so that like we can't necessarily help that the platforms, in order to be seen, are the platforms of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. So it's more so I'm creating to fit that thing, but that's sort of a means to an end. Just like if you apply to a job, I got to apply through this platform. It's not my fault that that's what I have to do. But it's also to create in a way that feels normal to you, even if it's not something that you've seen, or in a way, because there's this sort of like cadence and structure on how things are given out. And so you can, switching verticals, if you think about that in like a lifestyle vertical, right? There's a blog. I've recently started seeing people make fun of people that do food reviews. And it's this like sing-song cadence of like, come with me to Halava, and I try Halava and it was so Halava. And it's like the fact that I can imitate that, and probably 90 people just came right in your brain. And like, also for anybody's listening, you've heard that same, like, come with me to whatever. Take that approach differently. Like, take that a different way. One of my really, really good friends, Sierra, who has recorded stuff for me for sound bites, she's an example of somebody where the reason why I love her content is she's her. I mean, it's her, the way that she shares, the way that she speaks. She talks about it like, child, I just be doing stuff. And she feels like she my friend and just be doing stuff because she does. The way that she presents is different than sometimes what people that I've seen. So I also say that to say, like, if you are creating or trying to do something, you can, it's great to look at what other folks are doing to get an idea of something. But think about it from what do you like? How do you like to shoot something? You don't have to be face on. I think for the longest, for 3 years on Bees Bites, I ain't show my face. I almost refused to do it, to be honest, because I was afraid that if I started showing my face, number one, people would typecast me. Number two, because I was cooking, I didn't want people to judge me because I was Black. I just wanted them to judge the food. And honestly, I did notice a slight shift when I started showing my face. People were like, oh shit, she's Black. Now, there were subtle things, like my hands are in the videos, obviously, so I'm brown, but like, it changed a little bit, but it's also about, like I said, sharing things in the way that is like, and you said it as well, that is innate to you. Like, how do you want to see something? How do you want to share something? But, and Pat gonna get mad at me as well, if you are cooking and you start cooking the egg rolls and the things, it's okay. You got to start somewhere. And so it's fine to start with things that are comfortable. Just like, i.e., when I started cooking, the very first things I cooked were things that I knew, which was mac and cheese, collard greens, whatever. And then as I became more confident, it's great. So it's okay to try things that make you feel confident and you're familiar with. So I will eat your egg rolls. Pat won't, but I will.
Let me clear the air on that one.
No. Made mad. So
it's not that I don't like egg rolls. Don't get me wrong. I've made egg rolls. I love egg rolls personally. All I'm saying is I feel like there are people who see cooking as a way to make money. They don't have a love for the actual art. It's kind of like whenever you see, and I know people probably can give me hell for this too. It's kind of like when you see a rapper that has never had an acting class a day in their life, and all of a sudden you see them in a movie, and they're making millions of dollars just because of their name, but they can't act for shit. And you have people who are actually, oh, I'm a good actor. I'm a good actor. I've been, studying at, this school. I've been going to auditions and I can't even get a role. I feel the same way about cooking. Like, don't get me wrong. If you want to learn how to cook and, use, social media as a way to develop that skill, by all means. But there are some people who are like, oh, well, I don't know how to cook, but I see, Chef Bria or Chef Pat out here doing it. They're like they're making money. Let me do the same exact thing and make money. And what do? They start with the egg rolls, and just mention egg rolls. They start with the egg rolls. They start with a couple of recipes. They already have the elaborate platforms and setups. They're using it as a way to kind of make money and to grow. And there's nothing wrong with making money or anything like that. But to me, it just doesn't seem authentic. It just seems like you're only doing this because it's a way to make money and to capitalize on a trend. And that's the kind of content that I feel kind of overpowers like everybody's opinions on cooking, because there's a lot of people who do cooking content out there. Just like there's a lot of people who do lifestyle content. There's a lot of people who do day in the life. They do makeup content. But there are a lot of people who do that kind of content because they see it as this is a quick way to get rich. And then what happens whenever they don't get the views, when they don't get the support, they crash out. They blame everybody in the world. And then you kind of see that they're not really passionate about it. They just want to do it. So that's why I make the whole comment about the egg rolls. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if you want to make an egg roll, by all means, make an egg roll. I'll eat your egg roll. But if you're going to try to become a chef, especially on social media, do it because that's something that you want to do. People can see right through the phoniness, and people will definitely call you out on it, especially this day and age when, like you said, you have people mocking you in videos and like, come at me as I come do this. Or like you see the cooking videos where people are doing the overtop slapping the meat and like they're just
I'm like
chopping. Like, why?
Please, because that steak does not want to be fondled like that. It did not ask for it. It did not. It does not.
Did not consent. No.
But also, to my last point to that as well. Like, also as someone who creates on the platform, get off the platform is the other thing. So when someone asked me recently, like, do you want to be like a content creator? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not a content creator. I have a 9 to 5. So let's I'm not. I I cook food in my house that I record, that I share because I think it would be helpful for people to know. And I think it looks good. That is as much as I am in that way. I took myself off the platform and started creating out of it. So it was to create sound bites, actually put that in people's hands. So I say that too, as well as whatever vertical that you are in, take it off the platform. Go meet people, go do the thing so that you can actually grow the thing that you're trying to do. And some of the folks that I look at, like, and probably some of those bigger creators are like a Keith Lee or like a Tabitha Brown. The reason why I named those two people in particular, there's many more folks, so those are just the first two that came to mind, is that what they were able to do, though they started on these platforms like TikTok for both of them, they got themselves off the platform. So i.e. Keith Lee was able to start, and I literally remember this because my husband Matt used to make fun of me all the time. His little drony voice would come on. He'd be like, "You still listening to him?" I like to say I was one of the original Keith Lee. Like when he was in his apartment in his little bluey chair that his daughter had, I was there. I was there when he was cooking, trying to do all that other type of stuff. And yep, with his hands all pursed up and all that. I was there. And I love his story so much because I just love how he was grown to take that off of the platform. Same thing with Tabitha Brown, and she was giving her words of wisdom in her car, after she was doing Uber, you know what I mean? And she was able to manifest that and take that off the platform. So also look at the platform as it's a way to make, yes, there's content and there's things like that, but there's also brands to work with. There's also people to meet. Like I met Pat on the Instagrams. Like that's how we became friends because I wanted to just be able to connect with folks. And coming off of the Food Network, I felt like I think I'm real. Like I feel like I'm not just a play chef. I can talk to other chefs that are similar to me. And having that as a friendship and having somebody who does the same things as you is also vital, to help yourself grow and help yourself, learn and introduce them to different things and spaces that maybe you wouldn't have been in. As long as they have your back for real. So don't be hanging out with fake people because that ain't it. But it's also taking yourself off the platform. So looking at it as not the end all be all.
Great advice. And real quick before we ask the last question to wrap things up, I also wanted to mention Keith Lee and Tabitha Brown as perfect examples of getting off the platform. And it just goes to show you that if you're actually genuine about what you're doing and your intent of being a creative, things like that will happen for people. I've been a Keith Lee fan ever since the first time I saw him talking in his car about, just wanting to do content, to provide for his family. And that's something that I relate to because that's pretty much why I do what I do. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the brand deals. I love the money. I love, going out there and people recognizing me off of social media in pretty much any state that I go to. But I do this because I'm trying to provide, a comfortable means for my wife and my kids with something that I'm passionate about. And from the moment I saw Keith speaking in his car, I was like, all right, I don't care what you're doing. You could just be talking to your car all day. You got my support. But those are the type of people that I talk about when I say you do this for the right reason. Same thing for Tabitha Brown. Tabitha Brown gives words of wisdom. Tabitha Brown gives words of encouragement. And the way she speaks with her voice, it does it in such a way where you almost feel like a best friend or an aunt or a grandmother, even a mom, just like talking to you when you're having a really bad day and you just want to crash out and you feel like the world is against you. She's just like, there, it's okay. Yeah. And then you just feel like, well, I'm not mad anymore. Like, what's the point of being mad? I've heard you speak to me. I feel perfectly fine with, the way things are. And those are the types of voices and people that we need more of on social media, which is, one of the reasons why I tell people, if we're going to make people famous, make sure we make the right people famous. Because one thing I learned about when TikTok supposedly went down the last time was that you started to see people's true colors when they thought that TikTok was going to.
Oh, yeah.
Good. But these two people, Keith Lee and Tabitha, they stay true to who they are. And they're always going to be those types of people.
Yep.
So, again, say that to say, if you're going to do social media content, have intent with it, be true to your word, be true to who you are as a person. If you're over the top, be over the top. Yep. If you're somebody who's calm and chill, be calm and chill. You're going to find your audience. You're going to find your tribe, but just be yourself. That's all we can ask you to do.
That's it. And that's all.
And before we wrap up this amazing interview, I just want to ask you, as a creator, as a chef, first and foremost, as a small business owner, as a Black woman, as a person who just loves life and just loves everything that you put your heart into, what words of advice do you have for someone who's looking to come down a similar path as you?
Right. One of the biggest things that I had, it was probably like something that changed my life last year. And to me, I credit that mindset to having all the things I had. Number one, which is sounds counterintuitive to what we just said. You cannot care what people think. You cannot care what you look like when you're not what people think. I mean that in terms of, I see people say like, I don't want to share this, or I don't want to post this, or I don't want to do this because of what? And I'm like, because of what? Because the person that you went to high school with 20 years ago is going to think, what? Who cares? You're not even the same person anymore. They not thinking about you. If they are, so what? So what's the worst thing going to do? Send it somewhere? Great. Run up my shares then. Send it someplace. I don't care. So that was number one. Number two, as I started to create more in public, that same mindset is what kept me. So I've seen that both ways, where people, make fun of people who film in public. But when I started filming in public and people would look at me, I didn't care, because what I said in my brain was, they don't know who I am. They don't know I've been on the Food Network. They don't know what I got going on. So I don't care if they see me sticking my phone in my shopping cart to film me getting They don't know who I am. Who cares? And three, I think the most important thing that I would say is, you cannot be afraid to fail out loud. And the like, if you never take, like, you can think about something all you want, you can plan it, write it, chat GPT, it don't, you can, and I can't do this because I don't have, or you can just do this. And I say this in honesty, when I did my very first sound bites, it was incredible. It was amazing. Were there like holes or things, not that anybody noticed, just from my own point of view and how I like to do things, were there holes? For sure. But if I never took the step to just do the thing and put it out there, it would have never occurred, which had never given me the opportunity to learn from that, to make a second one that was even better. So you also can't be afraid to fail out loud. I also say that as you are someone, if you want to do this and sort of post or share or create as well, you also can't be afraid to post out loud. I see it all the time when y'all post stuff and then you take it down and then you put it back up, or you hide the likes and you take it away. I posted a video the other day. I have 3,000 plus followers. It has 11 likes on it, and it's going to sit there with the 11 likes on it because I don't care. It's because, again, like Pat and I were saying from the get-go, if you share for yourself in the first place anyway, it's fine. It's okay. I can go back and maybe later analyze what, why, when, where that didn't work. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I don't, because I don't care that much in particular things. But you also cannot be afraid to fail out loud. And the other thing is, you have to do it. Stop telling yourself that you can't because you didn't order the thing from Amazon, and you can't because you don't got the right camera and you don't got the right phone. When I don't eat, as a person who cooks at home, and that was where I started with Bia's Bites, I didn't have 100 tools. I still don't got that. When I cook, sometimes I'm reusing the same bowl 3-4 times. I'm reusing the same spatulas 3-4 times. I am leveling my phone on my cabinet with a bag of flour to hold it still. Should I get the correct tool? Maybe. But my point is, you don't need it. You don't need it to do the thing. I don't know how to edit. Well, you sure ain't gonna learn if you don't ever open your phone to figure it out, because my first videos sucked. Like, they were awful. But I learned and I got better because I did the thing. So I think sometimes we come in a world where everything has to be planned, right? I need to structure this and plan this and do that. And I think to a degree, sure, give something some thought. But you got to stop thinking about stuff at some point in time and just do it. So whatever that is, just take the step. And again, are you creating or doing the things because you want to do it, or are you more concerned about what people are going to think? Because what I will say is, when you're in the process of doing something, people got a lot to say or don't got a lot to say. And the moment you hit something, then it's like boop, boop, boop. When I had my first sound bites and I had put it out there, right after it sold out, and I mean to the minute, I got inundated with texts from people I actually know, like in real life friends, and then other folks I don't know. And phrases like, I didn't think it was going to sell out. Why not? Like, how come? Like, why didn't you think so? Because you're saying a lot in what you're saying, but it's like, okay, cool. The second time it came around, it was like, I got my tickets. I bet you did, you know? So it's like, you can't do things based on what people are going to think of you. You can't also run in fear. And sometimes we can be the ones holding ourselves back. So everything that I had, like I had a year last year of just like, fuck it. And that's the best way I can describe it. My year last year was fuck it. Whatever I thought of, I did. I mean, like literally, if I thought of it the day before, the very next day, I was like, we're going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. So you kind of just have to like, you have to jump into things without fear, and sort of block it out. Whatever you got to do to block it out. Sometimes I would mute people that I was like afraid that they were going to see something, just so that I didn't even have to like feel it. I don't really know, but whatever you have to do to get past that, you have to, because the same fear of people that you're thinking about are thinking about you, number one. And also my last point, which is probably the overarching thing that helped me get through everything. I had to tell myself I wasn't that important. Because to think of yourself and say, oh, what is this person thinking about me? You're giving yourself too much credit. Half the people don't even see half the stuff you're looking at. They don't even know. And I know that because sometimes when I talk to friends in person, I'm like, oh yeah, like when I was on the Food Network, they'll go, you were on the Food Network? In my head, I'm like, I've been posting about this for a year. Like it's been a year since this point.
Yeah.
They ain't see it. They don't know what I'm talking about. So you so worried about somebody seeing something, they don't even know what you're talking about. So now you're afraid to post, you're afraid to share, you're afraid to go to the thing, create the thing over people that don't even know. You giving yourself too much credit. You're not that important. You're not that important. So every time I did something, not that important. If I filmed in public and somebody saw me, I'm not that important. I ain't gonna see him again.
That last line was a bar. I'm not. And just before we wrap up, just two things I wanted to say. First of all, you are absolutely correct, because there's a lot of content creators out there. And yeah, sometimes we get caught up in our own head, like, oh, you know, what if this person thinks this of me? What if this person thinks that of me? Half the time we post our content, our own mutuals don't get to see our posts, whether it's because of intent or because of how the algorithm is. Mm-hmm. But they're not judging your post. They're more worried about their own stuff and what people think about them.
Right.
So post what you're going to post. Don't feel uncomfortable about it. Do it with intent. Second of all, you mentioned something that I always mention to every content creator who comes on this platform, everybody who I happen to stumble across who even wants to hear me. If you don't want to hear me, I'm going to say it anyway. Mm-hmm. If you want to get into content creation, you do not need the most expensive cameras, at least right away. Mm-hmm. You don't need the most expensive microphones. You may need, some decent lighting, but you don't need expensive lighting. This right here. Yep. It's my iPhone. Yep. When I did content creation for the first time, this is all I had. I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have, I'll cut my light off right now. As a matter of fact, hold on a second. So all this right now. This is how I used to do my videos. Mm-hmm. No light whatsoever. It was just me, just me doing this. Yep. I didn't have the best lighting. I used a lamp. And let's cut that back on because we're doing a podcast right now. But the point is, I didn't have all those things. I wanted those things, but realistically, if I'm not comfortable with getting in front of an iPhone and speaking to people, what difference does a $500 camera going to make? All it just does is just have an expensive piece of equipment in the house that's not going to be used. Absolutely. Use the iPhone or whatever phone you have. Use your phone as your tool to get started. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not going to be the best quality. You may not get that many people watching your content immediately, but you're going to get people familiar with who you are. Your personality is what's going to sell you to people. And the thing is that you might. That's the thing. You might. I literally just today was realizing that, my iPhone camera settings were not optimized to help me out the best. So I'm like, and the thing is, that phone that y'all walk around, that iPhone, that's $1,000 piece of equipment. It's probably one of the most expensive pieces of equipment that you have. You're probably just not maximizing how to use it in the best way. So, and again, I love TikTok for that reason, because it has taught me so much. Go look up your camera settings. Make sure they're optimized in the best way. Look at some of those different things. And if you are going to invest in those tools, look at some of those things that are inexpensive. I got a light that I clip onto my phone, and that's what I use. And you would think I had studio light. That light is $8, but it looks like it's connected to the sun.
And that there's subtle differences. There's also free editing tools that can also cheat some of those things. So do a little bit of the research of the things that you already have in place. And again, ain't nothing wrong with setting up your phone in between your Keurig and a picture frame on your countertop, if that's the angle that you're gonna get. Like I said, if you need to strap your phone with a hair tie to the strap it, do it. Who cares? Like, if it gets the job done, it gets the job done. And later on, you can invest in those things, like Pat said, but don't lead with if somebody sees, if somebody's not, somebody's going to see it. You're going to find the right audience. Like Pat said, if you're being true to yourself. And then more importantly, doing it for you because you want to do it.
Well said. Well said. Well, folks, that about does it for this episode of the podcast. I want to thank Bria for joining us today, sharing her insights, and as always, being a pleasure to speak with. Any last words for our audience?
Make sure y'all follow me on the things while you're there. At Bia's Bites. My name is Bria, but my page is Bia's Bites. So that's BIYASBITES. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm not on the YouTubes because I don't have that all in me. But you should go watch all of Pat's videos on YouTube because they're very entertaining. He be cooking his black behind off. I be trying to jump through the phone and get a plate, and he will not give me one. So I'm gonna just have to run up on him and my girl so I can get me a plate because he be stingy with it. So that's just that on that. So follow him too, and because you should be if you listen to this podcast, you should be
getting praise and catching a stray all in one sentence. I appreciate it.
All of it.
I got you though. But definitely make sure you're following her to get the latest updates on her next Soundbite event, as well as all her culinary creations and her journey. I'll share a link to her social media pages in the description of this episode. And with that being said, as I've said since the first season, this podcast is for you lovely people out there. And without your support, people like us wouldn't have these platforms to share our experiences with, our passion for cooking, and just the love of the business overall. So as long as you're willing to pull up a seat, I'll always have room for you at the chef's table. On behalf of the Cast Iron Conversations family, I'm Chef Pat Lee. Much love. Until the next time we feast, peace.